Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be giving my NFL DraftKings pick for Week 9. We got a 10-game main slate today for this Week 9 slate. Real quickly, before we get started, if you guys could drop a like on the video, would really appreciate it. And also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you click that subscribe button. Also, be sure to turn on notifications as well. Just click the little bell next to the subscribe button. And if you do that, that will notify you every time I upload. So would really appreciate it if you guys would subscribe if you're new, and also be sure to drop a like. Also would really appreciate that, guys. Does mean a lot to me. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started looking at this Week 9 slate. Alright, so at quarterback this week, up top we've got Deshaun Watson. He is our most expensive quarterback on the slate. He's 8,100. He gets to face the Colts. Obviously a great matchup for Deshaun Watson. If you want to pay up for him, I think he's actually worth the price tag. The dude's just been so good. He went into Seattle. They still lost that game, but Watson went into Seattle and put up 38 DraftKings points through 4 touchdowns. Did throw 3 interceptions, but had 38 DraftKings points, which is really what we care about when we're rostering him. We want the fantasy points. And he gets a great matchup today against the Colts. The Colts probably one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. So if you want to pay up for Watson, I think he's definitely in play. He's really expensive. I don't really like to pay up for quarterback. But I think you're going to have to pay up for quarterback this week. There's just not a lot of guys like sub 6K that I like. I think once we get like past Jameis Winston, there's really nobody that I'm going to be considering that cheap. So I think you're going to have to consider some of these 7K, 6K quarterbacks. So if you want to pay up, Deshaun Watson, definitely in play at 8,100. My favorite quarterback on the week is 800 less. Love Russell Wilson here at 7,300, playing at home against the Redskins. I'm going to be plugging Russell Wilson into the core. I just love this spot for Russell Wilson playing at home, where he has played very well this year and just throughout his career. Russ has always played well at home. So far this year, 3 games at home. Russ, he's averaged 28 DraftKings points. He's been on a pretty big heater as of late. In his last 2 games, 29 and 39 DK points. Just been playing really well. We know Russ has crazy upside. Like we saw against Houston, he put up 39 DK points. Threw 4 touchdowns of that game. Also had some rushing yards as well, which is what we like. Russ definitely provides us upside that way. He can run the ball and get you fantasy points that way as well. So just love this spot for Russell Wilson. I think this game could actually be pretty competitive. I think the Seahawks are going to have to throw in this game. They really don't have much of a running game to begin with. So I love this spot for Russell Wilson. Even though he's 800 less than Watson, I feel like a lot of people, if they go up that high, they're going to just go to Watson. I think Russ is definitely in play here for 800 less. So I'm going to be plugging him in at 7,300. And then looking for some other quarterbacks. Drew Brees, he's 7K. He gets to face the Buccaneers at home. I think Drew Brees is definitely in play here. He hasn't looked that good this year. He's sort of been inconsistent. But he is playing at home where we know the Saints play well. In the Superdome, I think this game could be high scoring. Right now, Jameis Winston is questionable for this game. He did get injured last Sunday against Carolina. I believe he hurt his shoulder again. So if he doesn't play, that does scare me a little bit. Saints could win this game by a large amount if Jameis doesn't play. But if Jameis plays, this game could be a sneaky shootout. And I think BREES is going to have to throw a ton. We know he has upside. He's put up some monster games in the past when he's playing at home. So if you want to pay for Drew Brees, I think him, Watson, and Russ Wilson are all definitely in play, 7K and over. Russ Wilson being my favorite of the 3, but I think the other 2 guys are definitely in consideration. And then one more quarterback I like for cheap. Like I said, there's not a ton of quarterbacks I like for cheap. I think Jameis Winston's in play at 5,800, going up against the Saints in the Superdome. But like I said, he is questionable. If he doesn't play, then I wouldn't obviously go to him. But if Jameis plays, I think he's in consideration at 5,800. But the other quarterback I wrote down is at 6,100. Carson Wentz, really tough matchup here, going up against the Broncos. But I think Carson Wentz might just be a little bit too cheap here. The guy's just played so well this year. Definitely should not be 6,100, even in a tough matchup. If you just look through his game logs, Wentz has been so solid. 23, 28, 13, 15, 31, 22, 32, and 18 DraftKings points. He's only 6,100 here. We know he has upside. He can put up 30 plus. And even in this tough matchup, I think Carson Wentz could still get 20 plus DraftKings points. I don't think the Eagles are going to have any success running the ball. I think they're going to have to throw it. I believe Carson Wentz probably going to throw the ball close to 40 times in this game, just because I don't think their running game is going to have a ton of success against Denver. So I definitely like Carson Wentz here. If you want to go cheap, Wouldn't play him in cash because that is a risky spot against Denver, but 6,100, he definitely has upside. The return value on that salary. So if you want to target Carson Wentz for cheap, I think he's in play at 6,100. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for quarterback. There's not a ton of quarterbacks I like this week. I only wrote 4 down. Deshaun Watson up top, I think he's in play. Russell Wilson, I love at 7,300. He's going into the core. Drew Brees at 7K. And then if you want to go cheap, the only 2 cheap guys I really like this week are Carson Wentz and Jameis Winston at 5,800. Under Winston, I'm just not seeing a ton of guys I'm going to target. Always like to go cheap at quarterback, but there's just not any guys I really see here that I think I'm going to be looking to target. So yeah, that is pretty much it for quarterback. Let's go ahead and move on to running back. All right, so at running back this week, I really like this position for some mid-tier and value guys. There are some cheaper guys I like at running back, so I don't think I'm going to be paying up here. There is one guy I wrote down if you do want to pay up. Ezekiel Elliott at 9K going up against the Chiefs. I think if you want to pay up for running back, I think he's a guy you can definitely target this week. We know Zeke's just so solid. In his last 2 games, just been crazy good. 43 and 30 DraftKings points. Put up 2 rushing touchdowns in both of those games. Had a receiving touchdown against the 49ers as well. So I think if you want to pay up for Zeke here, I think he's definitely in play. Kansas City rushing defense hasn't been that great this year. They've allowed 124 rushing yards a game, which is towards the bottom of the league. And the Cowboys are playing at home here where we know they play well. So if you want to pay up for Zeke this week, I think he's a fine play. But there are definitely some good 6K and 5K running backs I like here. I think wide receiver might be a position I look to pay up. So besides Zeke, not a ton of running backs I really like paying up for. Like I said, I like this 6 and 7K range. Definitely some guys here I'm going to be targeting. But if you want to pay up Zeke, definitely in play at 9K. But looking in the 6K and 5K range, a couple guys I like here. First off, Christian McCaffrey at 6,500 going up against the Falcons. Just love this spot for Christian McCaffrey. We all know the Falcons really struggle with running backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield, and that is what Christian McCaffrey is best at. If you just look through his game logs, in his last 4 games, he's had 5, 10, 7, and 5 receptions, 7, 14, 9, and 7 targets. He's put up 14, 22, 11, and 10 DraftKings points. Been pretty consistent. Hasn't really posted a ton of upside games. Did have 23 against New Orleans and 22 against the Eagles. But other than that, hasn't really had any other monster games. But in this spot against a team that really struggles against pass catching running backs, wouldn't surprise me if McCaffrey put up a 20-plus game here. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he found the end zone as well. I think this is a really good spot for Christian McCaffrey. So if you want to target him in the 6K range, I think he's definitely in play. I'm at 6,500. Also, 2 other guys in that price range. ALVIN KAMARA at 6,300 going up against Tampa Bay. KAMARA, just a guy I'm going to be considering for a while now. He's just so solid. If you just look through his last 4 games, 25, 12, 15, and 16 DraftKings points, rarely is he going to disappoint you. He's not going to have a ton of upside games where he just wins you a tournament, but for cash games, KAMARA, so safe. He's been so consistent. With Adrian Peterson added there, it's pretty much going to be KAMARA and Ingram in the backfield getting all the work for the Saints. So I think Mark Ingram's in play, but I also like KAMARA for a little bit cheaper. KAMARA's just been so consistent. Like I said, he's catching balls out of the backfield. He's involved in the passing game. He's also getting some rushing attempts as well. So I definitely like him this week at 6,300. Playing at home. Love targeting the Saints when they're at home. So if you want to go to KAMARA at 6,300, him and McCaffrey, 2 guys I think you can target in that 6K range. And another guy I like in that range for 100 less than KAMARA, Lamar Miller at 6,200 going up against the Colts. Just a great spot for Lamar Miller. Like the price tag as well. The Colts probably have one of the worst defenses in the NFL versus the pass and the run. They haven't been that good this year, especially against the pass. They're bottom in the league, second to last, allowing 290 passing yards a game. But rushing yards hasn't been that great either. 116 rushing yards allowed per game as well. So just a great spot overall for pretty much all the Texans players. So if you want to target Lamar Miller this week, I think he's definitely in play at 6,200. He's getting all the work. He's getting close to 20 rushing attempts just about every game. Also involved in the passing game as well. Has seen 4, 2, 3, and 3 receptions, 5, 3, 4, and 3 targets in his last 4 games. So I definitely like Lamar Miller this week. I feel like he might be somewhat contrarian. I feel like if people are going to attack Houston, they're going to go to the passing game with Hopkins, Watson. They're going to target those guys. So maybe Lamar Miller goes a little bit overlooked here. But I think he is definitely in play this week at 6,200. And then my core running back for this week, really cheap guy I like here, 5,100, Joe Mixon going up against Jacksonville. Just love Joe Mixon this week as a value running back we can target. I just think the price tag is a little bit too cheap for Joe Mixon, and the matchup is great. We know Jacksonville, they're a funnel defense. They're really good against the pass, but really bad against the run. If you just look at their rank, they're best passing defense in the NFL, only allowing 161 passing yards a game, but rushing yards a game, dead last, 32nd, allowing 138 rushing yards a game. So I think Cincinnati's not going to have a ton of success throwing the ball here. They're going to need their running game to step up. So Joe Mixon should definitely get a ton of work here. Hasn't really got a ton of work just throughout the season. But the Bengals know this is their best running back. They need to get this guy as many carries as they can get. And in a game where I don't think they're going to have a ton of success throwing the ball, I think Mixon could see close to 20 rushing attempts here. And he's also involved in the passing game as well. Has seen multiple targets pretty much every game this year. If you can get a touchdown from Mixon, he's probably going to crush value because in his last 4 games he's put up 8, 11, 9, and 12 DraftKings points. He's only got a touchdown in one of those games, which was against Buffalo. So he's still getting you plenty of DraftKings points from catching the ball and running the ball. And if he gets you into if he gets into the end zone, could definitely put up 15 to 20 DraftKings points and totally crush value. So I like Joe Mixon as a really good cash play this week. For tournaments, I don't know if you want to target him in tournaments because I think he's going to be high owned this week, and I don't know if he has like 25, 30-point upside, which is what you kind of need for a tournament. But for cash, he's going to be such a good play for cash just because the price tag, how much volume he should see, should definitely be able to hit value. So I like Joe Mixon this week as a running back. You can target 5,100. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for running back. The 5 guys I wrote down this week. Ezekiel Elliott up top if you want to pay up for him. I think he is definitely in play. But this 6K range and Joe Mixon, the guys I really like, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Lamar Miller, all 3 of those guys in the 6K range I think are in play. And then one of my favorite running backs on the week for value, Joe Mixon at 5,100. But yeah, I think that is pretty much it for running back this week. Let's go ahead and move on to wide receiver. All right, so at wide receiver this week, up top we've got DeAndre Hopkins at 9,200 going up against the Colts. Pretty much same thing goes for Watson as it does for Hopkins. If you want to pay up for him, I'm not going to tell you not to. It's a great spot against the Colts secondary that's just terrible against the pass. They don't have really any good corners. Just a great spot for DeAndre Hopkins. We know this guy has a ton of upside. If you just look in his last 4 games, really only had 1 bad game, and that was against Cleveland. But other than that, 29 DK points against Tennessee, 27 against Kansas City, put up 39 against Seattle. So if you want to pay up for DeAndre Hopkins, I'm not going to tell you that that's a bad play. He is really expensive at 9,200, but if you can find the value, I think him and Watson are both worth the price tags, just given the matchup. If I'm going to pay up for wide receiver this week, it's definitely going to be for Hopkins. Although there are some intriguing options that are cheaper, like Julio Jones, Mike Evans, you could definitely target these guys, but DeAndre Hopkins just in the best spot overall, and he sees a ton of targets every week. So he would be the guy I would pay up for. But wide receiver this week, also kind of like running back, some guys in the 6K and 5K range that I'm going to be targeting. So I'm not going to be plugging Hopkins into the core, but he will definitely be on my radar this week when creating lineups. So if you want to pay up for him, definitely in play at 9,200. But looking in the 6K range, a couple guys I really like here. First off, Dez Bryant at 6,400 going up against Kansas City. I think this is a good spot for Dez Bryant. I'd imagine that Kansas City is going to put Marcus Peters on him. Peters is definitely a good corner, but I just really like this price tag on Dez Bryant, and I love the fact the Cowboys are going to be playing at home here, where we know they play well, and Dez also plays really well at home. Dez really hasn't had any monster games so far this year, hasn't posted a single game over 20 DraftKings points, but I think that could change here. I like this spot for Dez Bryant. He sees a ton of targets every week, so he's definitely in consideration for cash games, especially with that salary at 6,400. It's pretty easy. I think it's going to be pretty easy for Dez to return value on that cheap salary, even though he's going to be matched up with Marcus Peters. I still could see Dez having some success in this matchup. So I like him here at 6,400 going up against Kansas City. I think if you're looking in that price range, definitely Dez Bryant, a guy I'm going to be considering. The next 6K, a guy I like here, Demaryius Thomas going up against the Eagles. I think DT is in play here. He's another guy that just sees a ton of targets every week. I'm not sure if Emmanuel Sanders is going to play here. I'm recording this on Monday afternoon, and I'm not sure if Sanders is going to play in their Monday night game against Kansas City. If he plays in that game, then I'd imagine he's going to play against the Eagles. But if Sanders misses Monday night and somehow can't go for this game against the Eagles, then Demaryius Thomas, a guy I'm definitely going to be starting here just because he gets a ton of targets, and with Sanders out, the targets will increase. DT saw 14 targets against the Giants, and when he gets the targets, which he pretty much does every week, he can definitely put up the fantasy points. He did put up 25 fantasy points against the Giants in Week 6. So I like this spot for Demaryius Thomas at 6K. The Eagles secondary hasn't been that great this year, and I think Denver might be playing from behind in this game. So I like Demaryius Thomas this week at 6K. I think he is definitely in play. Him and Dez Bryant, two guys I like in that price tier. And then looking 6K and below, there's two guys I like sub 6K. One of my core plays from this price range is going to be at 5,500. Really like DeShaun Jackson here going up against the Saints. I think DeShaun Jackson might be a little bit too cheap here. We normally roster DeShaun Jackson for his big playability, but now that he's with the Buccaneers, he's kind of getting more usage than you would think. He's not just getting a ton of deep balls every week. He's actually seeing some short routes, and he's getting a lot of targets every week. 9, 6, 8, and 8 targets. In his last 4 games, he's put up 18, 12, 12, and 6 DraftKings points. We're not used to seeing DeShaun Jackson be a consistent player. He's more of a boom or bust guy. Is what we're known for, or what he's known for. But now that he's with the Buccaneers, he's getting a lot of targets, not really running a ton of deep routes, which I think makes him a definitely considerable cash game play. When you get a guy this cheap, getting a ton of targets every week, and going to be playing against the Saints in a game that I think could be somewhat high scoring. I like this spot for DeShaun Jackson. If you don't want to target Mike Evans this week and you still want a piece of that Tampa Bay offense, you can definitely target D-Jax this week at 5,500. Love the price tag, love the spot for him. So I'm going to be plugging him into the core. Then one more wide receiver I like in that price tier, Sterling Shepard at 5,200 going up against the Rams. Right now, DK has Sterling Shepard listed as questionable. I am recording this video on Monday afternoon, but it looked like he's going to be able to play in this game. He is practicing on Monday. And if Sterling Shepard plays, this guy could see a ton of targets. The Giants really don't have anyone else to throw the ball to besides him and Evan Ingram. So I think that definitely puts Shepard into consideration here at 5,200. Just because of how many targets he's going to see, Eli really doesn't have anyone else to throw the ball to. So I definitely like Shepard this week if he plays. I think he is consideration at 5,200. And yeah, guys, I think that is pretty much it for wide receiver. I did want to mention one guy down here, 3,500. I'm hearing a lot of talk about DD Westbrook. Right now, he is starting to practice again for Jacksonville. DD did have one of the best preseasons out of all the wide receivers going. So if this guy does wind up playing in this game against Cincinnati, and he does wind up being one of their starting wide receivers, he could be a potential value play at 3,500. I did want to quickly mention him. I'm not sure if I'll be playing him or not, but I'm hearing a lot of talk about him, about how good of a preseason he had, and he could possibly be making his debut here against Cincinnati. So if he is definitely in consideration this week at 3,500, be sure to keep an eye on him, though. If he doesn't wind up playing, then obviously you're not going to want to put him into your lineups. But if we get news that Westbrook's going to play, he's going to start, then I think he's definitely in play for value this week, 3,500. But yeah, that's pretty much it for wide receiver. The guys I wrote down up top, DeAndre Hopkins, if you want to pay up for him, I think Hopkins, one of the top wide receivers on the slate. Other guys I like in the 6K and 5K range, Dez Bryant, Demaryius Thomas. In the 6K range, I think they're in play. And then in the 5K range, I like DeShaun Jackson and Sterling Shepard. And then if you need a cheap guy, DD Westbrook, if he winds up playing and starting for Jacksonville this week, he could be a value play we consider at 3,500. But yeah, that's pretty much it for wide receiver this week. Let's go ahead and move on to tight end. Alright, so at tight end this week, up top we've got Zach Ertz going up against the Broncos. I'm not going to be on some of these expensive tight ends this week. I just don't like paying up for tight end. Zach Ertz has to face the Broncos. Obviously, you don't want to target Denver, but they are definitely susceptible to tight ends. So Zach Ertz could be a considerable play here. But he's 6,800. He's still really expensive, so I'm not going to be on him. Not going to be paying up for these guys. Looking sort of in the cheaper tier. I rarely pay up for tight ends, so I'm going to be looking in the 5K, 4K, and 3K range. So starting off at 5K, my favorite tight end on the week, going to be plugging him into the core, pairing him with Russell Wilson. Really like Jimmy Graham here, going up against Washington. I think it's just a good spot for Jimmy Graham. Washington, they do have some pretty good corners, so they are susceptible to tight ends. They do struggle to tight ends, so I think this really sets up well for Jimmy Graham. He's been really consistent as of late. In his last 4 games, he's put up 10, 15, 14, and 19 DraftKings points. Has seen 6, 8, 6, and 5 targets. He's managed to catch 4 touchdowns in his last 4 games. And I believe he did catch the touchdown that won them the game against Houston. So I believe Russell Wilson might heavily rely on Jimmy Graham here, just because I think the wide receivers for Seattle could have some trouble against some of these good Washington corners like Josh Norman, which means I think Jimmy Graham could have a ton of success in this matchup. So I like him this week at 5K, pairing him with Russell Wilson. Really like that quarterback to tight end combo. It's pretty cheap as well, only going to cost you 12K, which isn't a lot for a quarterback and a good tight end. So I like pairing them up, plugging them into the core. Looking for other tight ends that we can target for cheaper. Jack Doyle at 4,300. I think Jack Doyle is definitely in play this week going up against Houston. I think Indianapolis is going to be playing from behind in this game. They're going to have to throw the ball. And when they've been throwing the ball, Jack Doyle has been the guy that they've really relied on. In his last 4 games, he's seen 7, 11, 7, and 14 targets. He's put up 7, 17, 10, and 33 DraftKings points. T.Y. Hilton has really struggled for Indianapolis. A lot of the Colts receivers just have really struggled in general. Jack Doyle's been having a lot of success, so I think Brissett is going to really rely on Doyle. And like I said, I think they're going to be playing from behind. They're going to have to throw the ball, and Brissett I think is going to lean on Doyle. So if you want to target him this week at 4,300, I think he is definitely in play. Tight end. And also like Cameron Brate for 200 less. Forgot to mention him going up against the Saints. I think Cameron Brate, another guy you can target that's just really consistent. 17, 19, 12, and 10 DraftKings points in his last 4 games. Has seen 9, 8, 9, and 5 targets. So if you want to get some exposure to that game on Tampa Bay's side, I definitely like Cameron Brate at tight end. I think him and Doyle both in play in that 4K range. And then there is one cheap tight end that I want to mention, really, really cheap, 2,900. A.J. Derby going up against the Eagles. I think A.J. Derby might be a considerable value play we can target at tight end. With Emmanuel Sanders being out these last few games, A.J. Derby has been seeing a lot of targets. In his last 3 games, he's seen 6, 4, and 7 targets. Has put up 17, 2, and 11 DraftKings points. He's definitely a risky play, but he's only 2,900, and for him to get you enough value, you really only need like 10 to 12 DraftKings points for cash game value. So if you want a really cheap tight end, I think you can definitely target A.J. Derby this week at 2,900, especially if Emmanuel Sanders doesn't play. Derby might be heavily relied on. Him and Demaryius Thomas should see plenty of targets if Sanders is out. So I did want to mention him as a cheap tight end play that we can definitely consider at 2,900. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for tight end. I did write down Jonnu Smith as a play for the Titans. If Delanie Walker does not play, right now he is questionable. If Delanie Walker is out, definitely consider Jonnu Smith at 3,400 as a value play as well. But yeah, I think that is pretty much it for tight end. Let's go ahead and move on to defense. Alright, so at defense this week, I'm not going to talk too much about the top defenses. I think if you want to pay up for them, I think they're in play. I think the Texans are probably my favorite defense out of the top 3. I would probably rank them Texans, Jaguars, and then Titans. So if you want to pay up at defense, definitely like the Texans and the Jaguars. I think both of them are in play. But looking in the mid-tier and cheaper end, that's where I like to target defense. One of my favorite defenses on the week is at 3,300. Love the Eagles here, playing at home against Denver. I know I did recommend some Denver guys, but I think if you don't want to play those Denver guys, then you can definitely consider the Eagles defense at 3,300. Denver, they do have a really good defense, but offense, their offense has just not been that good this year. Trevor Siemian, not the best quarterback. And I love the spot for the Eagles playing at home against a bad offense, and they're only 3,300. So I think if you want to target the Eagles defense, I think they're probably one of my favorite defenses on the week at 3,300. I just love the price tag, love the spot playing at home against Denver. So I'm going to be plugging them into the core at just 3,300. And then some other defenses I like at 3K. The Giants playing at home against the Rams. I think the Giants are a consideration as a defense that you can target for cheap. Although the Giants have really struggled offensively this year, their defense is still pretty good. And going up against a young quarterback that will make some mistakes, Jared Goff, I think the Giants defense definitely in play here at 3K, playing at home. I think if you want to go a little bit cheaper, you can target them. And then one more cheap defense I wrote down is at 2,700. The Panthers playing at home against the Falcons. I think the Panthers are also in play as a cheap defense. The Falcons just really struggled. They really struggled just all year, and especially on the road. The Falcons have always struggled on the road, or they don't play nearly as good on the road as they do at home. And this Panthers defense is pretty good, so I think if you want to go cheap. You can definitely target them at just 2,700. Matt Ryan will definitely turn the ball over at times. He will definitely take some sacks. So I like the Panthers as a cheap option we can target at 2,700. But yeah, that's pretty much it for defense, guys. That's pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you drop a like on the video. And be sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel. Also, be sure to click that little bell next to the subscribe button, so that way you'll never miss out on any of my new videos. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck this week, guys. Peace.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, she shaking fast. Yeah, she dropping slow. What? Yeah, neck on fro. Whoa, 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 whoa.